I have read a number of non-fiction books related to World War II, and these ones have stuck with me the most by far, so let's dive right in. The first book I want to talk about today is called Bloodlands by Timothy Snyder. The Bloodlands refer to the land between central Poland and western Russia during the years from 1933 to 1945, where over 14 million innocent people were killed. This book goes into the details of Stalin's regime and the number of people who died basically when Stalin starved Soviet Ukraine, and then moving into the Nazis and the Holocaust and what happened during World War II. The Holocaust is definitely very well known, but this book goes into a lot of detail about many other towns and cities that were basically destroyed during 1933 to 1945, and how so many, unbelievably many innocent civilians were killed. Timothy also talks about the relationship between Hitler and Stalin and what ended up happening during World War II that meant that Hitler started focusing on killing Jews. This book was incredibly eye-opening, mainly because I had no idea how many innocent people died during 1933 to 1945. Of course, I had heard of the Holocaust before and I knew that the casualties of World War II was high, but this just brought to light so many more instances of, to be frank, mass killings that I didn't know about. It's incredibly eye-opening and it's incredibly educational, and after reading this, I haven't thought about World War II in the same way again. This book really highlights how just emotionally destructive the time from 1933 to 1945 was. I almost cried during half of it because I couldn't believe just the thousands and thousands and thousands of innocent people that died. It's so eye-opening, it's so interesting, and I highly recommend it. The second book related to World War II that I've read that has stuck with me probably for forever is Sophie Scholl and the White Rose. This book is about Sophie and her brother Hans and their group of friends that started an organization called the White Rose. They were German citizens during the Nazi regime, and they were basically a resistance movement. They distributed a number of leaflets that went against the Nazi regime, which was extremely dangerous to do during the time, and it ended up with Sophie and her brother being caught and trialed and in the same day beheaded. I found this book particularly interesting because I never thought of Germans being resistant to the Nazi regime. I know that probably sounds a bit weird, but it's just a side of the war that never occurred to me, which is so silly because of course there would have been Germans that resisted the Nazi movement and saw that it was destructive and a dictatorship and that it definitely wasn't a good thing. And this book really brought to light, I guess, one of the many movements that there were to try and take down the Nazi regime by Germans themselves. Sophie was also particularly young. I think she was actually only 21 when she was killed by the Nazi regime. And so this book is just particularly heartbreaking, but it's so amazing to read about such a young woman standing up for what she believed in and really making a change. So much so that the Nazi regime, I guess, ended up retaliating in the most severe way possible. This book gave me a whole new perspective on World War II and the Nazi regime, and I just thought it was wonderful. And it reads almost like a novel, and it's really engaging to read as well. And there are some photos in the middle which I really like too. Let me see if I can show you some examples. Yeah, here are some. So old photos of Sophie and her brother and the White Rose. It's a really wonderful book. Very informative, maybe not wonderful in the way that it ends, but a really engaging read, really educational, and I highly recommend it for anyone looking to read about the resistance movement from Germany itself to the Nazi regime. The third book that I want to talk about today, I don't actually have with me because I listened to it as an audiobook instead of reading it, but it's called The Choice by Edith Eger. This book is so unbelievably emotionally charged. Edith was a young woman when she was taken to concentration camp, and it recounts her experience there and then basically her life afterwards as well. She ended up becoming a psychologist and a public speaker, and it really recounts the way that she took such a traumatic experience of being in the concentration camp and used it to grow and to make a positive difference in the world. Edith recounts in some detail her experience in the concentration camp, which I found pretty heavy in some instances, but also really interesting to learn about. And she recounts a lot of what happened immediately after the war as well. For example, returning to her home, which had been ransacked while she was in the concentration camp. and how she felt like even though the war was over, she couldn't go back to her old life. Her life had been changed forever, which I think is just a really confronting thing to realize on its own. Like, I can't imagine going through the experience of a concentration camp to begin with, but then when you finally get home, your home is not your home. Things are different, society is different. It would just be so difficult to get through. Edith then talks a bit about her later life and her career as a psychologist and a public speaker. And towards the end of the book, she recounts a moment while she was in the concentration camp that she didn't mention when she was recounting the entire experience. I won't tell you what actually happened, but it just adds an extra layer of emotional turmoil to the book in a way. What happened in this moment is something that I think that most humans would find difficult to let go of and to forgive themselves for. But the overlying, I guess, message that comes through from this book is that you can heal any experiences. And the message that I took away from this book is that if Edith can get through an experience and move on from what she experienced as a young person, then all the troubles in my life not only pale in comparison, but are absolutely something that I can resolve as well. I think that this book not only gives a really interesting and eye-opening first-hand account of what happened inside concentration camps during World War II, but it's just such a dare I say it, heartwarming book, mainly because, like I said, the message is that humans can overcome anything. And even though what Edith went through was so unbelievably traumatic, it's heartwarming to see how she didn't let that bring her down. She healed herself and now she's helping others to do the same. And that part is unbelievably heartwarming and encouraging. I think the choice is one of the most influential books that I've ever read, and it's going to stay with me probably for the rest of my life. And in many different points of my life where I feel maybe overwhelmed or like I'm facing a challenge that I'm not sure how to overcome, I do think back to Edith's story, and then I feel a little bit more confident that I can do it. I hope this video has given you some good ideas of books that you might be interested in reading. Like I said in the title of this video, the 3 books that I mentioned today really and truly have opened my eyes to what's happened in the past, particularly during World War II, and they just gave me a different outlook on life. And if you do end up reading any of them, I hope you enjoy them as much as I have. I'll leave links to all the books that I mentioned today to Amazon in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!